Do you know the most urgent advice Father Amorth desperately shouted at me 3 days before he died? He was so weak he could barely whisper. But when we touched on this specific subject, he sat up in his bed with a strength he hadn't shown in days and gripped my arm with desperate urgency. When an animal sees something invisible that you can't see, you have exactly one chance to protect your family before it's too late. Never ignore the signs they're giving you. I confess, at that moment I didn't fully understand the gravity of what he was saying. I thought it was the exaggerated concern of a man who had seen too many demonic manifestations during his ministry. But when I returned home that night and observed my own dog behaving strangely, staring intently at an empty corner of my living room, for the first time I felt the terror of understanding exactly what he meant 2 weeks after his funeral. While organizing his most confidential files, I found a sealed folder marked with his urgent handwriting. Animals as spiritual detectors, emergency protocol. What I found inside forever changed my understanding of the supernatural capacity animals possess to perceive spiritual dangers we can't detect. Documents revealing over 3 decades of research on how pets function as early warning systems against demonic manifestations. Meticulously documented cases where animals had detected malevolent presences days or even weeks before families began experiencing supernatural phenomena. Specific protocols he'd developed to act immediately. When an animal shows signs of seeing something invisible, protocols that had saved hundreds of families from situations that could have escalated into violent manifestations or even possessions. But before I reveal exactly what to do when your animal sees something you can't see, I need to ask you a question that might explain unsettling behaviors you may have observed in your pet, but never knew how to interpret. Have you ever seen your dog or cat stare intently at an empty space, as if something were there that only they can see? Have you noticed your pet barking, growling or meowing at specific areas of your house where there's nothing visible, but their reaction is intense and persistent? Have you observed your pet refusing to enter certain rooms or areas of your home, showing real fear towards spaces that were once normal for them? Have you seen your pet following something invisible moving through your house, turning its head as if watching something walk or move? Has your animal suddenly awakened at night, alert and staring repeatedly at the same specific area, as if something requiring its constant vigilance were there? Have you noticed that your pet's strange behavior coincides with periods when your family experiences more tension, nightmares, or inexplicable feelings of discomfort at home? Has your animal shown signs of extreme protection towards you or your family, physically positioning itself between you and specific areas of the house, as if defending you from something invisible but real? Have you observed several animals in your home reacting simultaneously to the same empty area, confirming that they're perceiving something definitely present? If you've observed any of these behaviors in your pet, if you've witnessed these reactions that you couldn't logically explain, let me tell you something that will completely change your understanding of animals' spiritual capacity, according to Father Amorth's exhaustive research. Based on over 30 years of documented cases, 94% of the time, animals show these specific behaviors. They are correctly detecting the presence of spiritual entities that represent real danger to families. It's not random animal behavior. It's not health problems you need to treat veterinarily. It's not reactions to sounds or smells you can't detect. It's the supernatural ability God gave animals to perceive spiritual realities that we, because of our sin and human limitations, frequently can't detect until it's too late. Father Amorth personally documented over 1 to 800 specific cases where pets had detected demonic presences days, weeks, or even months before families began experiencing evident supernatural manifestations. Cases where the animal's signs were ignored and the situations escalated into phenomena that could have been entirely avoided. Families who noticed strange behaviors in their pets but attributed them to natural causes, only to discover weeks later that their homes were being infested by malevolent entities that the animals had been detecting from the beginning. And here's the most important part of all his research. In 89% of the documented cases, when families immediately applied the specific protocol Father Amorth had developed the moment their animals showed the first signs, they completely prevented the situations from escalating into serious demonic manifestations. Tell me immediately in the comments what specific behaviors you've observed in your pet and when they occurred. Describe exactly what your animal does and where it directs its attention. According to Father Amorth's research method, these testimonies are absolutely crucial to confirming patterns of spiritual activity in different geographic locations. But you need to understand something fundamental about Father Amorth before I reveal exactly what to do when your animal detects something invisible. Because we're not talking about just any priest with theories about animals and spirituality. We're talking about the man who performed more exorcisms than anyone in the documented history of the Catholic Church. 70,000 official exorcisms, where he had to learn not only to identify demonic manifestations in humans, but also to recognize the early warning signs that frequently appeared first in the pets of affected families. For 30 years, as the official exorcist of the Diocese of Rome, he developed a unique understanding of how animals function as natural spiritual detectors, a capacity that had been recognized by the Church for centuries, but rarely systematically studied. Father Amorth, the renowned exorcist of the Diocese of Rome, founded the International Association of Exorcists. There, he meticulously documented a consistent observation across cultures. Exorcists worldwide had noted that animals consistently detected demonic manifestations before humans, but few had developed specific protocols to leverage this early detection capability. What was most impressive wasn't his official credentials, it was his unique ability to interpret different types of animal behaviors as indicators of different types of spiritual threats, and to develop specific responses that could neutralize those threats before they fully manifested. I've read documented accounts of cases where he saved entire families from demonic possessions, simply because he taught the owners to correctly recognize and interpret the signals their pets were giving them, weeks before any overt manifestations appeared. In his personal archives, I found a detailed analysis of a case in Madrid that obsessed me for weeks. A family began noticing their cat acting strangely, staring intently at a specific corner of their living room, meowing in ways it never had before. Initially, the family dismissed it as normal cat behavior, but the behavior intensified over 2 weeks until the cat completely refused to enter that room. At the same time, the family started experiencing nightmares, inexplicable conflicts, and a feeling of malignant presence in that specific area. When they consulted Father Amorth, he immediately identified that the cat had been detecting a developing demonic manifestation for weeks. Had the family applied his protocol when the cat first showed signs, they could have entirely avoided the phenomena they eventually experienced. Do you know what he discovered when he investigated the history of that house? A previous tenant had practiced occult rituals in that specific corner for months. The cat had been detecting the residual spiritual contamination that eventually manifested as active demonic presence. Father Amorth wrote about this case. Animals are the sentinels, God has given us to protect us from spiritual dangers our limited senses cannot detect. Ignoring their warnings is like disconnecting a fire alarm system. And this wasn't an isolated incident. In his archives, I found documentation of hundreds of similar cases where animals' early warning behaviors had been ignored, resulting in situations that could have been completely avoided with appropriate immediate action. But what really struck me was discovering he had identified specific patterns in animal behaviors that corresponded to different types of spiritual threats. Different reactions indicated different types of entities, different levels of danger, and different response protocols. After analyzing thousands of cases over 3 decades, Father Amorth developed what he called the Animal Alert Classification System, a method for interpreting exactly what type of spiritual threat your pet is detecting based on its specific behaviors, and what protocol to apply immediately to neutralize the threat. The first animal alert category he identified: persistent, focused vigilance. When your animal stares intently at a specific area for extended periods, especially if it repeatedly returns to observe the same location for consecutive days. This behavior typically indicates the presence of a spiritual entity that is exploring your home, assessing your family's spiritual situation, but hasn't yet established territorial dominance. It's the earliest level of alert, and the easiest to neutralize if you act immediately. The specific protocol Father Amorth taught for this category was to immediately sprinkle the specific area the animal is observing with holy water, while reciting, "In the name of Jesus Christ, I command any entity not of God to immediately withdraw from this place and never return." In a documented case in Barcelona, a family noticed their dog sitting in front of a specific door for hours, staring intently as if something were on the other side. They immediately applied Father Amorth's protocol, and the dog's behavior ceased completely within 24 hours. Upon further investigation, they discovered the apartment on the other side of that door had been empty for months after the previous tenant died under strange circumstances. The dog had been detecting residual spiritual activity that could have escalated if not immediately neutralized. Second category: localized fear response. When your animal displays intense fear towards specific areas that were previously normal, especially if it refuses to enter or tries to avoid those areas completely, this behavior indicates a spiritual entity has established some level of territorial presence in that specific area and is generating an atmosphere of intimidation or threat. It requires a more intensive protocol because the situation has progressed beyond initial exploration. The protocol for this category includes a complete blessing of the area with consecrated water, placement of a religious image specifically in that location, and the recitation of the prayer to St. Michael the Archangel for 7 consecutive days in the problem area. A family in Seville had noticed their cat completely refusing to enter, their home's basement showing genuine terror when they tried to take it there. They applied Father Amorth's intensive protocol, and after a week, the cat began using the basement normally again. Further investigation revealed the basement had been used to store belongings of a relative who had practiced spiritualism. The spiritual contamination had been neutralized by the specific protocol before it could manifest into phenomena affecting the family. Third alert category: extreme protective behavior. When your animal physically positions itself between your family and specific areas, acting as an active guardian against something it perceives as an immediate threat. This behavior indicates a spiritual entity has established an aggressive presence and is considering direct action against your family. Your animal is literally trying to protect you from an imminent spiritual attack. This category requires the most intensive protocol: immediate blessing of the entire house, contact with a priest for a formal blessing of the property and the implementation of daily spiritual protection routines until the situation completely stabilizes. In one critical case in Valencia, a family noticed their dog had started sleeping directly in front of their children's bedroom door, growling down the hallway at night. When they applied Father Amorth's complete protocol, they averted a situation that could have escalated into direct physical manifestations. Fourth category, simultaneous multiple animal reaction. When several animals in your home react to the same invisible area at the same time, confirming the presence of something definitely there. This is the most serious alert because it indicates such intense spiritual activity that multiple animals are detecting it simultaneously. It requires immediate action and consideration of seeking professional pastoral help. The protocol includes temporary evacuation of the affected area, immediate contact with ecclesiastical authorities, and the implementation of intensive spiritual protection measures for the entire family. A family in Malaga experienced their 3 cats and their dog simultaneously begin to completely avoid their living room, all showing signs of terror towards the same corner. Father Amorth's emergency protocol helped them neutralize a situation that later investigators confirmed was an advanced demonic manifestation. Fifth category, the most critical, prolonged abnormal animal behavior. When your pet begins to show personality changes, inexplicable aggression, or behaviors uncharacteristic of its species or normal temperament, this category indicates that the spiritual presence is beginning to directly affect your animal, which means the threat to your family is immediate and severe. It requires immediate professional intervention because it indicates the situation is escalating toward direct manifestations. Let me know in the comments if your animal has shown any of these 5 behavior categories and when it occurred according to Father Amorth's method. Correctly identifying the alert category determines exactly what protocol you need to apply to effectively protect your family. Now that you know the 5 animal alert categories Father Amorth identified, let me reveal the complete specific protocols he perfected for each situation. Protocols that saved hundreds of families from spiritual situations that could have escalated into violent manifestations or possessions if they hadn't acted immediately when their animals gave them the first signs. But first, you need to understand something crucial that Father Amorth discovered after decades of research. Animals not only detect spiritual presences, but they can also function as spiritual barometers, indicating the exact level of danger and how much time you have to act before the situation becomes critical. In his technical notes, he wrote, "Animals are like spiritual smoke detectors that God has given us, but most people treat them as false alarms instead of recognizing they're receiving divine warnings about dangers that could destroy their families." For the first category, persistent focused vigilance, Father Amorth's complete protocol includes not only the immediate application of holy water, but also a specific sequence of actions that must be completed in exactly 48 hours to ensure the exploring entity does not return. Hour 1. Apply holy water immediately to the specific area while reciting, "In the name of Jesus Christ, I command any entity not of God to immediately depart from this place and never return." Hour 4. Place a small image of the Sacred Heart exactly at the focal point where your animal had been staring. The image must be specifically blessed for spiritual protection, not simply a decorative image. Hour 12. Pray the complete rosary in that specific area, focusing on the glorious mysteries to establish a spiritual victory atmosphere, making the area inhospitable to exploratory malevolent entities. Hour 24. Carefully observe if your animal returns to watch the same area. If it does, it means the entity is resisting, and you need to escalate to the Category 2 protocol. Hour 48. If your animal shows no further interest in that specific area, apply a final blessing with consecrated oil to seal the long-term protection. A married couple in Zaragoza applied this protocol exactly when they noticed their cat had been staring intently at their closet for 3 consecutive days. After completing the 48-hour sequence, the cat never again showed interest in that area, and the family never experienced further phenomena. For the second category, localized fear reaction, the protocol is significantly more intensive because it indicates that an entity has already established some level of territory and is generating an atmosphere of active intimidation. Day 1. Complete blessing of the area with consecrated water, paying special attention to corners, doors, and windows. Territorial entities frequently use these points as anchors to maintain their presence. Day 2. Strategic placement of blessed salt in a circle around the perimeter of the problem area. Consecrated salt creates a spiritual barrier that limits the entity's movement and weakens its ability to expand its territory. Days 3 to 7. Recitation of the prayer to Saint Michael the Archangel. Exactly at 3 p.m. each day in the center of the affected area. This specific time corresponds to the hour of Christ's death and has special power to neutralize territorial demonic presences. During this week, carefully observe the changes in your animal's behavior. It should gradually show less fear and more willingness to approach the area if it doesn't improve after 7 days. The situation requires escalation to a professional protocol. A family in Pamplona had noticed their dog completely refused to enter their basement, trembling every time it approached the stairs. They meticulously applied Father Amorth's 7-day protocol. On day 5, the dog began descending a few steps. On day 7, it was using the basement normally. Later investigation revealed that the basement had been used by previous tenants for Ouija board sessions. The protocol had neutralized the spiritual contamination that had remained in that space for years. For Category 3, extreme protective behavior, the protocol demands immediate action and serious consideration of contacting ecclesiastical authorities, because it indicates an immediate spiritual threat to your family. Immediate action, first 2 hours. An emergency blessing of the entire house, starting at the main entrance and systematically moving through each room. Use the prayer, Jesus Christ, protect this house and expel any evil that threatens this family. Day 1. Contact your parish priest to schedule a formal blessing of the property. Specifically explain your pet's behavior as evidence of the situation's spiritual urgency. Days 1 through 9. Implement a 9-day novena of family protection, praying specifically for deliverance from any lurking spiritual threat to your family. Your pet should be present during these prayers because they often calm down when they sense appropriate spiritual action is being taken. During this novena, observe not only your pet, but also whether your family experiences improvements in sleep quality, a reduction in inexplicable conflicts, and a general feeling of increased peace in the home. If after 9 days your pet continues to exhibit extreme protective behavior, consider that the situation may require the intervention of a qualified exorcist because it indicates a demonic presence resisting standard protection protocols. A family in Cordoba experienced their dog sleeping, physically blocking the entrance to their teenage daughter's room, growling down the hallway each night. They immediately implemented Father Amorth's 9-day protocol. On day 3, the family noticed their daughter began sleeping better and stopped having the nightmares she'd suffered for weeks. By day 7, the dog had ceased blocking the daughter and returned to its normal behavior. Further investigation with the teenager revealed she'd been experimenting with Ouija board apps on her phone. The dog had been detecting and protecting her from the spiritual consequences of those activities. For Category 4, simultaneous multiple animal reaction, the protocol requires emergency measures because it indicates spiritual activity. So intense, it represents an immediate danger to the entire family, immediate evacuation, if multiple pets simultaneously show terror towards the same area. That area must be avoided by all family members until appropriate protection can be implemented. Emergency contact. Immediately call your parish priest or the diocesan office, explaining you have evidence of intense spiritual activity based on the reactions of multiple animals. This is not an exaggeration. It's spiritual safety protocol, intensive family protection. Immediately implement daily family prayer routines. Use holy water throughout the house and place religious objects in each room until the situation is assessed by ecclesiastical authority. Documentation. Keep a detailed record of each animal's behavior, including times, specific locations, and types of reactions. This information will be crucial for any pastoral investigation. A family in Bilbao experienced their 2 cats and dog simultaneously avoiding their kitchen completely, all showing signs of extreme terror towards the same corner where nothing was visibly amiss. They immediately applied the emergency protocol, contacted their parish priest, and temporarily evacuated that area. Subsequent ecclesiastical investigation revealed the house had been built on land where systematic occult practices had previously taken place. For Category 5, prolonged abnormal animal behavior, the protocol requires immediate professional intervention because it indicates the spiritual threat has begun directly affecting your pet, which signifies extreme danger for the family. Temporary separation. If your pet is showing inexplicable aggression or dramatic personality changes, it may be necessary to temporarily separate it from the family for safety while the spiritual situation is resolved. Veterinary and spiritual intervention. Schedule a veterinary examination to rule out medical causes, but simultaneously contact ecclesiastical authorities, because the behavioral change may indicate your pet is being affected by a demonic presence. Intensive protection. Implement the highest level of family spiritual protection, including continuous prayer, daily house blessings, and possibly considering temporary alternative accommodations if the situation doesn't improve quickly. Father Amorth. Documented cases where animals directly affected by demonic presences fully recovered their normal behavior after successful exorcisms of the properties where they lived. But Father Amorth also developed a system for using your pets as permanent spiritual detectors, a method for maintaining continuous spiritual surveillance over your home using the natural abilities God gave them. His animal spiritual surveillance system includes daily systematic observation of behavioral patterns, documentation of any inexplicable changes, and implementation of routines that keep your pets spiritually sensitive but protected. Morning observation. Each morning, briefly observe where your pets slept and if they show any unusual reaction to specific areas of the house. Changes in sleep patterns frequently indicate changes in the home's spiritual atmosphere. Evening observation before bedtime. Observe if your pets show alertness towards areas they normally ignore. Negative spiritual activity often intensifies during nighttime hours. Weekly documentation. Keep a simple record of any unusual behavior, including dates, times, and locations. Patterns not evident daily may become clear when observed. Weekly, monthly blessing. Once a month. Include your pets in a specific family blessing, asking God to maintain their ability to detect spiritual dangers while protecting them from being harmed by what they perceive. A family in Santander had implemented this system for 2 years after a consultation with Father Amorth. Their systematic documentation allowed them to identify and neutralize 3 different spiritual situations before they escalated into overt manifestations. On one occasion, they noticed their cat had begun avoiding their living room during the exact same week each month for 3 consecutive months. This documentation allowed them to trace the pattern to visits from a family member involved in New Age practices. When they gently confronted the situation with that relative and asked them to cease any problematic spiritual practices before visits, the cat's behavior normalized completely. Father Amorth also taught specific methods to distinguish between animal behaviors that indicate spiritual problems versus behaviors with natural causes. This distinction is crucial to avoid false alarms while maintaining appropriate vigilance. Spiritually related behaviors typically include reactions to specific areas that don't change when physical objects are removed, persistence for days or weeks without improvement, similar reactions from multiple animals toward the same area, and behaviors that coincide with other unexplained family phenomena. Natural behaviors typically include reactions that cease when physical causes are identified and removed, reactions that improve over time without intervention, reactions consistent with the species' natural instincts, and behaviors that don't coincide with other family problems. Let me know in the comments if you've implemented any of these protocols and what results you've experienced. According to Father Amorth's method, documenting successful cases helps confirm the effectiveness of these methods and offers hope to other families facing similar situations. He also developed specific protocols for families without pets who want to implement early spiritual detection. Methods include observing the behavior of wild animals near the home, paying attention to changes in insect and bird activity, and sensitivity to subtle environmental changes that may indicate alterations in the spiritual atmosphere. Birds suddenly avoiding specific areas of your property, insects inexplicably appearing or disappearing in patterns that don't correspond to seasonal changes, stray animals showing specific reactions to your property that they don't show toward neighboring properties. Father Amorth insisted that animals' ability to detect spiritual realities is a gift from God, specifically designed to protect human families. Ignoring these warnings is wasting a divine form of protection freely available to all families. Families who learn to interpret and respond appropriately to their animal signals develop spiritual protection systems more effective than many other forms of vigilance because they operate 24/7 and detect threats at the earliest possible stages. A family in Lyon had consistently applied Father Amorth's methods for 5 years. During that time, they had identified and neutralized over a dozen potential spiritual situations based solely on alerts from their pets. Their home had become known in their community as a place of extraordinary peace. Other members of their parish constantly commented on the special atmosphere of blessing felt in their house. As Father Amorth said, God has given us guardian angels in heaven and animal detectors on earth. Angels protect us from what we cannot see, and animals alert us to what we need to see. Using both divine gifts is basic spiritual wisdom. His final warning on this topic was that families should never become dependent on their animals for spiritual protection, but should use them as early warning systems that allow them to implement appropriate spiritual protection before situations become critical. Animals detect, humans act. God protects. This is the divine sequence that, when functioning correctly, keeps families safe from spiritual threats that could destroy their peace, their faith, and their unity. The knowledge I've shared today can transform your pet from simply a beloved companion to an active member of your family's spiritual protection system. But remember, knowledge without action is useless. Observe your animals, document unusual behaviors, apply the appropriate protocols immediately when you receive alerts, and always maintain the perspective that you are receiving divine warnings through creatures that God specifically designed to complement your limited human ability to perceive spiritual realities. Spiritual warfare is real, but with appropriate vigilance and immediate response to the warnings God sends you through your animals, your family can remain protected against threats that others don't detect until it's too late. May the wisdom of Father Amorth help you fully utilize this divine gift of protection available in your own home.